I'm Shannon Moore, and this is Formation. Today, we are going to continue with part two of the conversation we began last week with Stephanie Hord. Join us.
It's thinking back into those early 20s. I think in the moment I would have said, man, this is really hard. This is not easy. And I think back on it now, and I say, I think if I wouldn't have had those, if I wouldn't have had the people around me to do that, if I wouldn't have been in a place that was so antithetical to the way I believed by the end of it, I wouldn't be so open to having more conversations with people who are different than me. I wouldn't have been so open to trying to repair a relationship with my parents, who obviously think very differently than me.
Well, that brings me to our next topic, which is Galileo Church. You're not only the musician here, actually,
True.
your primary church gig is at Galileo Church. Tell us about that church and how you became involved with it.
Yeah, so right after college in 2016, I was applying for some positions in the DFW area, and I found a general manager position at a conservatory based out of Mansfield. And so I started working there for a couple years, and one day I come into work early, and my boss calls me into her office, and she's like, "Hey, so there's a church here in Mansfield." She's tiptoeing around it a little bit. I'm not one to, at that point in my life, to just outright be like, "Hey, these are my politics. This is who I am," kind of thing like that. And she's saying, "There's a church here, and I know the pastor really well, and they're about to be looking for a musician to be their kind of worship leader. Is that something you'd be interested in?" And I was like, "Yeah, it depends on the church," kind of thing. And she's like, "Well,"
Were you attending church at all at this point?
No, I was not attending church at all at that point. She says, "Well, it's called Galileo Church. It's a little more on the progressive side." We're like both tiptoeing around each other, like we're both going to end up in the same spot, but we don't know, kind of thing. And I said, "Oh, okay, well, I'll look it up," kind of thing. And I look it up kind of over my lunch break, and she's like, "Well, I have the pastor's phone number. Her name's Katie Hayes, and if you want to give her a call today, I think that'd be great." And so I give this person, who I have no idea who they are, I go out to my car on my lunch break. I sit in the car and I call Katie Hayes. She's in the airport going to do something. I wish I could remember, because it was probably something wild that I would have been like, "That's kind of crazy that's your life," as I often do to her now. But she calls and she tells me about Galileo. She tells me about the missional priorities that are, justice for LGBTQ people, beauty for our God who is beautiful. We celebrate neurodiversity. She starts listing off these, at the time, 4 missional priorities. It's 5 now. But, and I was like, my God, like, I did not know churches like this existed, especially not here, like in Texas. And I was like, I'm really, really interested. I want to, I want to look into this, kind of thing. And I like, please consider me, and all this other stuff. And she's like, "Well, why don't you come for a little while and kind of see what you think about it? I'm going to be out of town for the next week, so I won't see you there if you come this Sunday, but." And so I go that Sunday following that phone call.
Are they in the theater at this time? Or
no, they're at the barn. They're at the barn this time, where they're at now.
Okay.
Yeah, the big red barn. Something really wild happens. I walk in, and they've got a guest preacher in that day. And to my surprise, it is somebody who I went to school with at Hardin-Simmons.
No.
Yes, his name is Christian Briones. And he was doing a sermon on, oh man, it was something to do with the story of Noah's Ark. And I was just, when I walked in, and it's actually funny, if you've ever been to the Big Red Barn with Shannon, you have. If you walk in from the afternoon sun, you have to blink for a little bit.
Dark.
It's dark, kind of thing. So it was almost like my eyes cleared, and then I was like, and I looked
Scales fell
around.
off your eyes.
Yes, exactly. And I looked around, and I it was almost like a sign. It was like there are other people that are doing this before I even got here, that also grew up like that were also part of that same community. And when Christian and I saw each other, we were like, "Hey, how you doing? Like that's wild, kind of thing." And he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, I funnily enough, they're looking for a musician, and I was thinking about applying, and I this is awesome. Like everybody here is really cool, and I didn't know churches like this existed. I didn't know sermons like that were being preached, and I left from there, and I went to from that service. I was told that there was a podcast that is Galileo sermons that, funnily enough, I now produce as the worship architect. But the podcast called "That's What She Said," which is her sermon podcast, and I just started listening to them from that series, which I think was called "This Is Us." And I was listening, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is what I want to do. Like I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of what this church is doing. And so I applied, and it came down to me and one other person who is actually a great friend of mine, Nicole, who has
She's
played at
here.
1010, yes. And we met through that process and are great friends now. And then I found out I got the job in 2017, October of 2017. And so
That was a long process.
yeah, so this well, I guess this October now will be, I can't do math. 3 + 4 is 7. 7 years. Yeah. 7 years. So,
And your role has expanded.
oh, quite a bit. Yeah. So I originally was hired on as the worship architect, which is the,
Because y'all have funny names.
yes, worship architect, lead evangelist. There was one for a little while. It was called like Children's Czar or something
Youth
like that.
Czar or
Yeah,
something like that, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
That's the one
I don't remember right now off the top of my head, but it was great, and it really sped up that deconstruction process too, because I felt like I was in a place that I could ask questions and push and do all that stuff too. And like Katie is phenomenal and so patient too with all of that, because there's so many people at Galileo who are in a place where they just organized traditional religion is not where they're at, and they're looking for answers. And I'm so grateful that I found Galileo, because also too, if I wouldn't have found Galileo, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have found UCC. I wouldn't have been plugged into all of these progressive denominations and people who are doing church that I didn't know existed,
And there's a phrase that you all use at Galileo, I think, about is it spiritual refugees or religious refugees? What
Spiritual refugees.
Spiritual refugees.
Yeah, spiritual refugees. And actually, Katie wrote a book about that, about the early days of Galileo, called "We Were Spiritual Refugees." And I think it kind of comes with the territory, though, too, when we're talking about when we outwardly say the missional priorities are things like we do justice for LGBTQ people, we celebrate neurodiversity, we do beauty for our God who is beautiful. All of those things speak to a group of people that, when they hear that in the context of, and also God's love is for you, opens their eyes to the idea that they don't have to be an outcast in the religious communities that they grew up in. They don't have to believe that God thinks there's something wrong with them, that Jesus would not be on their side, and I think that because of that, it brings a lot of people to the door that are refugees in that respect. They have no home. They've just left the home that they had behind. They're desperately.
And they didn't have a dog
They didn't have a dog. Yeah, exactly.
give them the answer.
Yeah, or maybe they did, and that's all they have, and they're looking for more structure around what their faith could look like and what religion could look like in this new context.
Well,
Where
especially with neurodiverse people, I know in a service like our traditional service,
Sure.
which is beautiful
Yeah.
and in so many of those traditional ways, but I know that for some people, the organ is so loud
oh, sure.
for them as a person who has neurological differences that that it's impossible
Yeah.
to be in that service. And so I lead a service called Simple Worship, which you also
Yes, yeah.
provide music for. And I know that there are people who attend that service because it's quieter.
Yeah.
All that to say, for a church to say outright, we have a place for you, even if you think we don't.
Yeah, or everyone else says that you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Kate.
Let's do it.
How
She's
d-
my favorite topic, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did y'all meet?
So we actually met at Galileo.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Kate's one of my favorite people too, and
Same. Yeah.
I think you took it a step further than I will, but
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. We're married.
yeah, you got married, and how long? Is that 2 years?
Yeah. So it's coming up on 2 years now. Yeah.
Yeah.
November 11th. So in like a week and a half. Yeah.
So, well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
on
you.
that. But Kate joins you here as well. You're both at Galileo. What is that? How has being married or having this life partner helped you on the faith journey?
Oh, gosh. I need to like temper my emotions with that because it's been so impactful. I think so. From the beginning, from when Kate and I were first together, it was really tumultuous. We had met at a time in her life when she was looking for kind of the same things I was at a much younger age. Like, who is God? And, is there a God? Kind of thing like that. And I think that, I think she would say that she did not believe church was for her. It wasn't her thing. And it could be my thing, but, maybe it wasn't for her, kind of deal. And we had a lot of really good conversations that, went long into the night kind of deal that just made me realize, that outside of the bounds of a moralistic way of living that's driven by your faith, that there can be kindness and love and generosity and grace that exists outside of those bounds. And I saw that every day in the way Kate was so gracious to me through a lot of the turmoil that was going on, through the pandemic, through there was just a lot of things going on within her faith journey and even my own that were just coming to a head all at that moment. And we kind of found this moment together that was like, I love you, you love me. And I think the love that we have for each other is representative of the love God has for us. And that we could let go, for me specifically, I could let go of these perfectionist tendencies that the faith of my childhood had taught me. That it was like, if if you mess up even one time, like you've got to ask for forgiveness, the kind of,
Lest you die.
yes, lest you die kind of thing. We were talking the other day, and now that we're in a place now where, she regularly attends church, and is talking about getting rebaptized, and all that other stuff, like we now we're in a place now where we talk about the religious trauma that happened in our childhoods, especially for her because of the very strict religion that she grew up in. That we have these moments where we think back on our childhood. It was like, and I said, do you ever remember those? Did you ever have those times, or was it just me kind of thing, where you'd be laying in bed and this voice in your head would say something terrible and you'd have to be like, no, God, that wasn't me. That wasn't me, kind of thing. And I was like, and I realized now, it's like at the time, maybe I would have thought that was some otherworldly force, trying to get in, kind of thing like that. But then I think back on it now, and my wife is a psychologist. She has her PhD in psychology. And I think back on it now and all of the science behind that. And it was probably more likely that I was so obsessed with the compulsion of prayer, of asking for forgiveness, because it was so impressed upon me that it was like, you could die tomorrow. And like, what if you haven't asked for forgiveness for that one thing? It only takes one, kind of thing like that.
And it wipes out all the good
yeah,
stuff
it wipes
you
out
ever
all
did.
the good stuff. Yeah. And she was like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one, kind of thing. And there's been so many good healing conversations that, our marriage and our relationship has brought up. And I have to say too that I did not believe before we were together that love could be as boundless as some people had told me it could be. Because for me, it was always limited. It was always, you had to have passed some preliminary things, or there were some gates on it that were like, well, I love you until you disappoint me, and we talk about it all the time. We say, I love you infinitely, or I love you, regardless of what happens to you or who you are, or I want to love the you tomorrow as much as I love the you today, and I will. And those things, Kate loving me and me loving Kate, have really taught me a lot of really valuable lessons about what it means to really seek out love for someone, and to be patient, and to do all of these virtues that we would say in Christianity are so vital to the way that we exist in the world. And I think it was really, I had this idea of what I thought it could be, and every day I'm learning what it actually can be. And so I would say that, my relationship with Kate has been one of the most, if not the most important driving factors of my faith and the way that I view the world. Like I think to myself, like, I don't know who I would be without her, like I think, thank God I met you, kind of thing.
That is
Yeah.
fabulous. And
Yeah.
I could literally talk to you for hours, but we're going to have to
Yeah.
probably end at some point. I do want to mention one thing, though,
Sure.
that not a lot of people probably know about the two of us.
Okay.
And that is that I'm a big rugby fan,
Oh yeah.
for real. And you play rugby.
I do. Yes. Kate does too.
And
Yeah.
Kate does too. So people may not know that about us, but now they do. And
Yeah.
rugby's taken over. It's going to be
Yeah.
a revolution.
It's going to be a revolution, and yeah, you'll come to some games, and then we'll toss the ball around a little bit, and by the end, I'll get you
Or-
on the pitch sometime.
Or I'll just watch you.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'll tell you real quick before we go that
Yeah.
I had season tickets to the rugby,
The Jackals?
the Jackals
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Dallas last season. So Russ Peterman, our senior minister, was the first person I took with me. I had 2 tickets, and I
Okay.
would take somebody different each time. And so we're sitting there, and I said, if a ball comes this way, it's your responsibility to catch it.
Okay.
I'm probably going to duck, and I'll try not to scream. So,
He probably looked at you like,
no,
okay.
he knew.
Okay.
He was like, tracks.
Yeah,
I got you. I
tracks.
got
Right,
you.
right,
All
right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Stephanie. And if you'd like to share your faith story on formation, send me an email, formation@uccftw.com. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
You start with your hand on the bottom
Yeah.
here at your hip.
Yeah.
When you release it, you kind of want to push it out towards me. So point to me when you're at the end of the pass.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.